Hey, what's up? Cody here, and I got special guest today, Hailey Brooks. Say hi, Hailey.
Hi.
Who are you?
Hailey Brooke.
And what is your relation to me?
You're my dad.
Oh, I get to be your dad. How old are you?
11.
11 years old. I don't feel old enough to have an 11-year-old child. So I just thought I would include Hailey today on our devotion. She has some great wisdom that the Lord has given her, and so I thought she could share it with you today. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 7 through 9 says something pretty amazing today. It says this: "Two things I request of you. Deprive me not before I die. Remove falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me, lest I be full and deny you and say, 'Who is the Lord?' Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God." Here in this section, we see that the psalmist, the guy writing the proverb here, is praying to God. And he's got a couple of things that he's praying for specifically. Right there in the beginning of this, he says, these two things that I'm asking for. Number one of them is remove falsehood and lies far from me. What he's asking for is the idea of being refined. So, Hailey, when you think about being refined, what do you think about with that?
Well, I think of like when you look for gold and you find some gold.
Okay.
You would melt it, and then all of the things that weren't gold, like metal, would float to the top, and then you would scrape that off and it would be pure gold.
Oh yeah, right on. Yeah, so the same way that you find gold and it's not pure, it needs to be refined. That you've got to do that to gold in order to get pure gold. Otherwise, it's got a bunch of dirt and other metals inside it and things like that. And so you got to separate that out. And the best way to do it is melt it.
Yeah.
So what do you got to do in order to melt it?
Well, you gotta heat it up.
Heat it up
with fire.
With fire. So when the guy here in the proverb is saying that he wants God to refine his life, that could mean that he's asking God to turn up the heat in his life. Do you think that that would be comfortable or uncomfortable?
Not very comfortable.
Probably wouldn't be very comfortable. So when we ask God to help us and to change us, sometimes what God does is he actually turns up the heat in our lives. And so he turns up the heat and all this stuff comes boiling up to the surface, and then you start responding and reacting in crazy ways. You know, you punch your sisters in the face and you push them down the stairs and try to kick them and take all their stuff. And so all that stuff starts coming out, right? You do that every day? No, not really. Sometimes you guys end up fighting about stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And and mom and dad come along and we say, hey, we don't do that. We don't treat each other that way. So it can get frustrating, though, when you're constantly being told that, huh? Because you don't really want to be a little jerk child.
No.
But sometimes that stuff comes out. And when it comes out, it's God turning up the heat in our lives or using situations in our lives that may not necessarily be happy in order to pull that stuff out and refine us. So when we get that stuff shown in our lives, we shouldn't be discouraged by it necessarily, because God knew that stuff was in us way before we ever knew it was there. And as it comes up in our lives, it's God refining us. The second thing that this guy talks about in this proverb is that not only is he praying that God would refine him, but he's praying that God would give him contentment. Now, 1 Timothy chapter 6 says that godliness with contentment is great gain. And so if you want to know what the most important thing in your life is, what the greatest gain that you could ever have, it's these two things: godliness, being like God, allowing him to refine you and make you more like him, to purify your life. And then secondly, contentment. And so contentment is said here. Hailey, how would you describe contentment? What does it mean to be content?
Well, it's to be happy and satisfied.
Happy and satisfied. We asked Siri about that just before this, right?
Yeah.
Said, how do you define contentment? So happy and satisfied. Happiness can be kind of arbitrary, and it's hard to really attach that to something. But I think the idea of satisfied really gives happiness its real understanding and meaning. So what does satisfied mean?
Like you're okay with what happened.
You're okay with it, yeah. You ever been dissatisfied with something that you were just not satisfied about?
Yeah, like when we went to Disneyland and I really wanted to go on this space ride, but we couldn't because the little kids couldn't go on that ride.
Oh, they weren't big enough yet?
So we couldn't go on it all the time, so I was sad.
Yeah, it was definitely dissatisfying. But when you think back to that time when we were able to do that, was there something about that trip that was satisfying?
We got to go on the teacup ride.
Yeah, that's fun because you get to spin around and puke.
Yeah.
That's always fun. Get real dizzy. So yeah, it's one of those things. That's what makes you satisfied has more to do with your heart, more to do with your attitude. It has very little to do with the things that are happening in life, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's more about what your response is going to be, less about what's actually taking place. Can you be content if you don't have things?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, you're satisfied that you don't have anything, but you don't want anything, but you're still happy.
Yeah, it's kind of like that idea that you're not filled with desire for something else, that you're not stuck that I need this in order to be content, that I can be content even if I don't have it. And I think that that's a huge key, and that's kind of what the guy here is saying to us. He says, give me neither poverty nor riches. He's saying, just let me be able to have what I need and call it good. And he says, because there's a temptation on each side. The temptation is that he says, feed me with the food allotted to me, lest I be full and deny you. And so we can be like that, right? That we have so much stuff that we tend to think that I've got everything, I don't need God, everything's okay in my life, and I got everything taken care of. Or we can go on the other side. It says, lest I be full and deny you, or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. That if I'm poor and I have need and there's no way for me to provide for myself, and I go out and I do something that God wouldn't approve of, but I'm doing it because I just got to eat, I just got to take care of my family, and then I misrepresent God. So Hailey, how can you encourage us to be able to live this way? What do you think is an encouraging thing we could take away from this?
Well, you could be happy about like what you have, and let God just provide for you and not worry so much about it.
Just do your best and know that God's got you taken care of and that you can trust Him. Mm-hmm. God's trustworthy, right? Mm-hmm. And we can trust Him. And so I just want to encourage you guys with that today. From the mouth of Hailey, right to you, that you can trust God, that He is trustworthy, and that He'll take care of you, and that whatever you need, He's going to provide for you. So don't go too far one way or the other. Whether you think you don't have much and you think that you need to go out and do things that are going to compromise your faith or your godliness, don't do that. Trust that God will take care of you. Or on the other side, if you've got an abundance of things, if you've been given a lot, don't think that God gave you that for you, or don't write it off as I took care of me. I'm the one who came up with this. The Bible says that the very breath that you're taking right now is a gift from God. The fact that you can breathe, the fact that you can think, the fact that you can articulate a thought whatsoever is God's gift to you. So it's not because you work so hard and because you're so great and you have an amazing job that you created. No, it's God's gift. So be blessed in order to be a blessing today, and realize that everything in your life, all that you have, is a gift from Him. So have that refinement of the Lord and be content. God bless.